And there was a time when we would always preach from an outline, a little piece of paper, or from a little notepad, and then the computers came along, and the iPads, and the technology. But we'll get through this somehow. We do have some slides that you will see. Before I go into this message, I just want to share a couple of quick announcements. Did you enjoy that music, by the way? It was nice, wasn't it? Well, I sent an email out to the church asking for people to volunteer on the grounds, and we got a number of you who said you were going to help, and we are going to meet tomorrow at 1 o'clock here at the church and do some work. Those of you who have volunteered, you will be assigned a section that you will take care of. And we will also have some food tomorrow. We'll pull out the grill out of the garage and make some burgers and hot dogs and whatnot, Maybe some healthy stuff too. We'll see it. So that's happening tomorrow at 1 o'clock. If you can and want to help, we'd love to have you. We got rid of this piano. We just sold it. This piano was donated to us some time ago, and it's one of those electronic pianos that has a little disc in there, a little floppy disk you put in there, and then it works. So it looks very nice. It's very impressive looking, but it's really not, a high-end piano. But the reason we got rid of it is because, I don't know how many of you remember, we have our old piano, the Steinway, that was here, and we had it in the gym now for the last 2 years. And that piano over there is worth about $20,000 if it's fixed. And this one is worth about $500. So we decided to fix the other one and bring it back. And the man who is an expert in this, he already picked it up. It's going to cost us $3,500 to fix that old piano that was built in 1936, and all the pianists who play it, they tell me that it has a far superior sound to anything else that we have ever had in this church. So it's coming back in about 5 weeks, the old Steinway. And I think out of the 3,500, I think we already have 1,500 raised. So if anybody wants to pitch in for that, you're welcome to do that. Write $5 for the piano fund, and that way we won't have to. Cool. Maybe I think next time I'll just call everybody. But I just saw a report, and this is something serious I want to talk to you about before I get into the service. I just saw a report that came out of the conference, and I shared it with you. And it was a report on baptisms for the last 10 years. And on the very top of the list of 130-some churches is Arvada, with 320 baptisms in 10 years, which averages to 32 per year. And the second on the list is our Spanish church that meets in our gym, that is also one of our churches here in the district. And then they had about 200 plus people in 10 years. And then after that, it drops down to 170, 150. And believe it or not, there is like 60 or 70 churches that have only had an average of 2 people per year coming into the church. So that's great news, right? Isn't it? Here in the last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years. And when we look at our population of people who used to be in their 60s when I came here, many of them have passed away. A lot of them are in the nursing home and not able to come to church anymore. And as you can see, our church is not full at all. And it hasn't been for the last, I know we have over 100 kids in the different Sabbath school classes, and we have the youth over there. But this worship service here is not full. And it's not because a lot of our people are gone, And if you look around anymore, you don't see all of the gray hairs that we used to have here. So the church is going through a transition. So this is what I want to tell you. I said all of this because what I want to tell you is this. The kids, yes, I know we have the largest Pathfinder club in the conference and whatnot. It's going to be a while before they sit in these pews. It's going to be 10 years or so. So and the reason I sent you that email about baptisms yesterday is because we all need to be inviting people to come to church. And I think our young people, younger generation, they're doing that, But I just want to encourage everybody. Evangelism is not something that Ken Cox or Mark Finley does. Evangelism is something that every one of us does. Every day when you meet the person, ask the Lord to help you to find a way to invite, to share a little bit about Jesus. And I think that's gonna change. We've gone, in 18 years that I've been here, we have gone through many ups and downs. And there were times when we had church packed, and there were times when we had church like it is today. So I know we're going to rebound, but everybody needs to do their part. By the way, we had a baptism here. Chris, why don't you stand up? He decided to be baptized. And you got baptized on Friday, right? On Easter Friday. Yeah, and that's what he decided, and he and Milos came in, and Victor, his buddy, and we filled the baptistry, and we had a baptism, and I don't know if Milos voted you in, but I think we need a motion to have Chris be a member of our church. Second, all in favor? Welcome. Welcome to Arvada Church. Why do we as human beings get frustrated with life? Why do we get anxious with life? And one of the things that I've been studying about a little bit here in the last few weeks is this whole concept of priorities. What it is that are our priorities, what it is that frustrates us in life. And I've looked at all kinds of different studies, and every time I look at this, one thing comes forward, and that is that we get frustrated and upset when our expectations are not met. So you go to work and you expect your boss to be nice to you, and he's not. He treats you like you don't want to be treated. So you had a high expectation that this is going to look and feel in a certain way, and then your expectations just doesn't get met, and you become frustrated. You get out of your bed in the morning, and you get into your car to drive to work, and you have an expectation that people are going to be nice to you on the highway, and that they're going to let you go in front of them, and that everybody's going to behave, and then somebody cuts you off and slams on the brake and treats you like you're invisible, right? So your expectation is not being met, that things are going to go easy, and you get frustrated, you get angry, you yell at them, you flip them off, who does it? Everybody's pointing at everybody else, everybody's pointing. Let me also tell you something. I got angry one time, and then I looked over, and there was one of you there in the car next to me. So be very careful how you get angry on the road, because you may run into somebody that knows you very good. But when the expectations don't get met, we get frustrated. And you can take any example. There are millions of examples of that in life. You get married, and you think everything is going to be perfect, and your husband is going to be bringing you flowers every day and treating you nice, and then it doesn't happen. Or if you're a guy, you think your wife is going to be there cooking and cleaning all day long just so you can have all the nice stuff, Then you come home, and she didn't. And so your expectations don't get met. People get into fights. People get into arguments. Divorces and so on. So how do we deal with this? Well, what should our expectations in life be? And I come to a conclusion that life is simply not fair. I mean, that's a fact. Life is not fair. Sometimes we as Christians, we want life to be fair, but it's not. The picture that Debbie just showed here on the screen a second ago is something that I want you to look at for a moment. Life is not fair. We live in America, We live in America, so everybody has an apartment or a condo or a house. Everybody has a car or two cars. Everybody has some money in the bank. Everybody has a job, And we think that's the way it should be. Well, it's not. There are people out there who live like that. And I don't mean live like that because they are camping there for a day or two. They live like that year after year. They were born in that situation and they die in that situation. Life is not fair. Life is not fair. You can look at all kinds of places in the world and find out that people get sick all the time. People live in poverty. These kids, there are kids out there who are going to be born on the sidewalk and die on the sidewalk. Never sleep in a bed. And yet we complain when somebody cuts us off. We complain because the girl at the McDonald's didn't bring the freaking hamburger out fast enough for us. Because we are in a hurry. You know, we are in a hurry. And life is not fair. And how dare do they? You know what I mean? Well, I mean, what is our expectations? Look at these guys. They never are going to have a shower other than from a hose on a street. And, you know, there are millions of examples of this. I don't need to belabor the point. You can go online and look at all of this stuff. Look at the statistics. Look at the illnesses like Ebola. You know, people get those illnesses and they carry them away in body bags, your loved one. People get sick and they lose their loved ones. How many of us, that has happened to us too, right? My dad, I told you many times, died from diabetes. Your father maybe died from cancer. Betty Willis just told me a minute ago that her sister's husband just passed away. And you know her sister because she used to come to this church a lot. They live in California, and so Betty's brother-in-law just passed away from a massive stroke, you know. One day he was here, and then next minute he was gone. Life is not fair. You cannot expect to have everything that you want, because if you do, you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get angry, and you're going to be miserable, and you're going to make people around you also miserable. So we need to change our expectations, I believe. Jesus said, the poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. God does not owe us anything. And this is hard for us as Christians to swallow. Because every day, we got people out there who are going homeless, who are going jobless, who are getting sick, who are losing everything that they have. And if God is such a wonderful Father that He loves everybody, and if this prosperity gospel is true, then everybody in the world would be rich. Nobody would be sick. We wouldn't have wars. You know, so this is not the popular message. But it is a message that helps us cope with the world as the world is, the real world. So no, God never said that He's going to give you everything. But God did say something else. In John 16:33, Jesus said, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have trouble, but I have overcome the world. So Jesus Himself, right there is one verse that completely negates and throws the prosperity gospel idea into the trash can. There is one verse right there that says, basically Jesus says, in the world you are going to have trouble or tribulation or problems depending on the version of the Bible that you read. How many of us here in this room, at one point or another in our life, have had problems? Every single hand goes up. Every single hand. So if this prosperity gospel was true, we would never have any problems. But God didn't promise that He's going to give us good health forever and all the money that we want. But He did say something else. He said, you are going to have trouble, but I have overcome the world so that in me you can have peace. In spite of the troubles that you're dealing with. What does that tell you? Where do you have to look? God. You have to look to God. You have to look to Jesus. You know. Just like Peter, remember? When Jesus came up walking on the ocean? Walking on the ocean. Not like these magicians that do today, but walking on the ocean in the middle of the storm. You know. And he says to Peter, come. Now, that is a story of trouble. I've been on the ocean. Me and Milos went once time with my brother in Florida on a fishing trip. So we are out there fishing in this 16-foot aluminum little boat that came out of Colorado, and we are out there in the Gulf of Mexico, and we are fishing, and all of a sudden, we realized that something is changing. It was a nice day, and all of a sudden something is changing, and the sun disappeared, and the darkness came, and then the clouds came, and then I look over there, maybe a quarter of a mile away, and all of a sudden there is thunder. And I realize that a thunderstorm is coming really bad. And then I hear this huge thunder, just over to the left of us, maybe 200 feet. And this thunder just came down. It exploded like a bomb. And I'm looking over there, and this whole tree catches on fire. And all of a sudden there is rain and there is wind. And our little boat is like, I feel like if we get hit, by a lightning, we're going to fry. It's going to be like an electric chair. So I've experienced, and I'm like, let's get out of here, man. My brother's, oh, no, it's just going to go over, it's cool, And I'm like, no, it's not cool. I don't want to be here, Jesus, it's a story of trouble. So Jesus, tells him, come on out. Come out of the boat. Come out of that safety. Come out of where you feel safe. And walk with me through these troubled waters. And as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, what happened? He walked on water. He literally walked on water. So Jesus didn't calm the storm so that they would feel comfortable. Jesus didn't take away the problem. Jesus just said to them, hey, look at me. Look at me. That's all. So what are you looking at in this world? Who are you looking at? What's your focus on? The key is to overcome the world and its desires and to look at Jesus. That's what the key is in Christianity and in a personal walk with Jesus. That's what this is all about. That's why church is here. That's why we are here. We're not here to, promote specific doctrines or this or that. That's all nice, But we are here to learn how to and to teach others how to keep their eyes on Jesus. That's why we're here. Once you do that, then all of this other stuff, behavior and doctrinal stuff, it becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of you. But you got to have Jesus first. When it comes to life, the critical thing is whether you take things for granted or take them with gratitude. Sometimes we take it for granted that everybody should get out of our way, that all of our wishes should be granted to us, and we just feel that that's how the life should be. So I just want to give you a short little quiz. How do you look at life? When you talk to yourself in your head, what do you usually say? Do you usually say, for example, I absolutely must have this job or I'm going to die? I'm exaggerating, okay? But do you use that word must? I absolutely must marry that guy. I absolutely must get a raise. I must get into that particular school. I must buy this car. What language do you use when you talk to yourself? Is that what you say, I must? Or do you say, you know what? I would love to get that car, but if I don't, I'm going to get another one. I would love to get a raise, but if I don't, life is going to go on anyways. I would love to, get the promotion. I would love not to be sick. But if I get sick, I'm going to get through that with Jesus. What do you say to yourself? How do you talk to yourself? If you use this language of I must, and I have to, I must make $1 million. What's going to happen when you don't? Your frustration is going to go sky high. But if you say, I'd love to do it, but if I don't, I'm not going to kill myself. I told you a story. I had a buddy back at Andrews University years ago. We played soccer together. He was from a very wealthy family I'm not going to say from which country because then somebody could figure out who he was. He was from a wealthy family across the ocean, and he came to Andrews University and studied business, and he fell in love with this girl, and they were dating, and he was just as happy as could be. And he just wanted to marry her and be with her and all of that stuff. And then one day they broke up. And I came to a soccer game a week later that we had there in the gym, and he wasn't there. And I was wondering where he was. And I think that evening the message got around that one of the students committed suicide. Went back to his room and went into the clothes closet, and hung himself. Because he just operated on that principle that I have to have her. Nobody else is going to do. I just heard the story of somebody who lost their job on the news, and they went and they killed themselves. Locked themselves in the garage and turned their car on and died from smoke inhalation. They couldn't handle the idea that life can go on without that stupid job. Every time you say to yourself, I must, or this has to be this way, or no other way, your frustration levels are going to shoot through the roof. You're going to frustrate yourself and everybody else around you. God doesn't want us to think that way, because life is full of choices. Life is full of opportunities. Life is full of options. And we should not be thinking that somebody owes us something and we absolutely have to have it. My buddy told me one time, a dentist from Chicago, I think I told you this. He said to me, I was sitting at my desk working on my job, Oh, we got the dentist. Is that the dentist? No. And he says, the idea came into my head that I absolutely must have a motorcycle. And he said, I never had a motorcycle before. And he says, I just got obsessed with this idea that I have to have a motorcycle. And he says, I talked to my wife, and she says, are you crazy? What's wrong with you? We got already grown-up kids. And he says, when this idea came into my head, I just couldn't shake it. I couldn't get rid of it. I just knew I was never going to be happy until I get that motorcycle. And have you ever been in that situation where you want something and you don't think you're ever going to be happy unless you get it? It can be a stupid thing. It can be a belt, that you see at a Ross. It can be a jacket. It can be a watch. It can be some material thing, So he says to me, I went out there and I looked and I bought the Harley Davidson, And he says, I was so happy. My life was going to change. I was going to be a happy man. And he says, I got some friends, and on a Sunday, on a day off, we decided to go for a ride. And he says, we all went for a ride, and he says that it was the most miserable experience of my life. And I said, why? He said, all day long we are riding around, and I'm looking at these people's back. I can't talk to anybody. I can't do nothing. He's a talker. He's a social person. You know what I mean? So he's on a bike all day long looking at somebody's back. It didn't work out for him. Sometimes we want something so bad, and then when we get it, we realize that it's not all that it was cracked up to be. We should look at our expectations. We should look at what it is that we really want in life. So how do we do that? How do we strive less and strive more? Did you realize that there is a whole movement, the whole generational movement? You have a whole generation of people now, they're called millennials. You guys are sitting right here, They're just changing their values. Used to be when that the person would work 80 hours a week and save every penny and, try to buy a house and a good car and all of that stuff and save money and never have time for the family. It's changing. Younger generation is saying, you know what? I want to go on a cruise. I don't need to make $1 million this year. I want to spend some time with my family. So how do we do that? How do we strive less and thrive more? Point number 1, resist the accumulation of material things. We love to accumulate. We love to add more stuff to our house, to our garage. How many of you have a garage and yet don't have room in there to park your car? Be honest. Okay, we got some, you see. We just accumulate. We just put stuff that we get stuff that we don't need. And he said to them, Jesus says, I'm going to give you a verse for each one of these 7 points. And he said to them, take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. It's un-American what I'm telling you to do. It is, because the American thing is, you know, we had 9/11 and George Bush went out there and says, you want to help America, go out and do some shopping. Anybody remembers that? I remember that. You know, and what I'm telling you is to do is not American. It's not, it just goes against what the society does. You know how they used to do advertising back in the 50s? Back in the 50s, you would turn on your TV and you would see an advertising for a car, and they would advertise a Buick, and they would give you all of the wonderful reasons why you ought to have that particular car. They would give you all of the reasons why that's the best car in the world and why you ought to have it. And you know what's happened in the late 50s? Something has changed. Instead of telling you why you should have that car, they tell you why you should not have the car from a competitor. So what they started doing is they started creating fear in all of us. If I don't buy a Buick, I'm going to be in trouble, because all these other cars are just junk. If I don't buy the insurance from this particular company, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to have an accident, and this company is never going to come through. Next time you are watching TV, look at the commercials and see how much they're using fear to get you to go out there and buy more things and put them into your house or a garage or wherever. And everybody is getting so accustomed to this that in this society there is literally no end to how much stuff people are buying. And Jesus says life is not about accumulating things. It's not about the abundance of possessions. Because when the time comes for you to die, you lose absolutely everything. You can't take one single thing with you. So that's step number 1. Resist that natural drive to get more things into your life. Learn to be happy with less things. Jesus also says, keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be content with what you have. How many of us are truly content with the things that we have? Truly content and don't want any more. I told you a story. I saw a person, when people are young, you know, they say, I want a bigger house. Then they say, I want to buy another house so I can rent it out. And I saw a guy in Florida one time had 18 houses that was renting out. And then all of a sudden you get to be 65, 68 years old. You can't take care of all of them. So he started selling them all one by one, until he was back in the same little old house that he and his wife bought first time they got married. And then from that house, where do you think they went? They went to a nursing home. And somebody else came to that house to clean it out, threw away all of their pictures, all of their diplomas, everything that they ever worked for. That's what life is all about. You're going to spend all of your time, the majority of your time, daily time, on accumulating more things so that when you die, somebody else can have a garage sale, make some money. Is that what you're going to do with your life? Learn to be happy with less things. Number 3, simplify your life. I perceive that there is nothing better, this is Ecclesiastes 3:12, that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Simplify your life. God is not asking you to become a nuclear scientist and to change the whole world and to fly to Mars. He's asking you to live a simple life. And look at what it says here. Be joyful and do good. How many people here are truly joyful? Truly have joy in your life? That's what but the Bible says. Simplify it. Be joyful and do good. Do good. You don't need to do nothing fancy. Do good. A kind word. A kind smile. Hold the door open for somebody. Pick up the keys if you see an older person that they dropped them. Do something good for somebody. You don't have to sell everything and be a missionary. Just do some good every day. Number 4, focus on quality time. Also, that same verse, Ecclesiastes 3:13, it says, be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. Are you taking pleasure in the things that you do? Do you enjoy your work? Do you enjoy your study? Do you spend time with the people that you love? One of the big regrets of my life is when I left from the old country, I never had a chance to go back, and both my grandfather and my grandmother died, and I never seen them after I left. Never seen them again. I left when I was 16 years old, and I didn't go back for 28 years to the old country. And when I went back, half of the people that I cared for were gone, died. If you're not spending quality time with your kids, with your family, with your friends, with the people that you love, if you're not enjoying life, what are you here for? What are you here for? Be miserable? Make more money? God wants us to be joyful. He wants us to be happy. He put us on this wonderful planet so that we can enjoy it as best as we can. And anybody who tells you that Christians should not be joyful and happy, they don't know what they're talking about. Because it's not in the Bible. Eat and drink and take pleasure in all your toil. What gives you the most pleasure? I told you many times, that they did this survey of the people who are dying on their deathbed, and they asked them, what are their biggest regrets? And number 1 was they didn't spend enough quality time with their loved ones, with the people they cared about. Okay, number 5, give back. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver, and I want to just commend this church for the giving that you do to this church. And I know Jim hates me to say this. I'm very sorry, Jim, but I will say it again. Our budgets are always met. We are not one of those churches that prints a bulletin and says, budget is supposed to be $25,000 and we are $15,000 short. Never happens because of you and of your faithfulness. And I just want to thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And God is going to bless you for that. Give back. And don't do it reluctantly or under compulsion. Jim says every time I say this, you guys stop giving. So let's see what's going to happen this time. Chris is a young man. He married Norma. Her father was a member of our church years ago, and they attended this church for a while, and then they moved to Aurora, and they live in Aurora, and they go to Aurora Church. But they always listen to our sermons online and YouTube and whatnot. And when I sent an email about people volunteering to help here at the church, he called me and he says, Pastor Gordon, I have this riding lawnmower, and I want to come up from Aurora to Arvada to work on the property. And he came by and he met me the other day. He says, okay, just give me an area and I'm going to take care of it. I want to do it. And he's a young man. He's an intelligent young man. Works for the government, has a government job. Smart kid. I think he also went to Andrews. All of us guys who went to Andrews, we're pretty smart. So there is Chris. There is another Chris too. Chris, welcome. Chris is from Andrews. First time here. But anyway, so I'm talking about a different Chris. He says, I want to come. He says, me and my wife, we're doing good. He says, a lot of my buddies, they went into private sector and they're making twice the money that I am making. But he says, they're also working twice the hours that I'm working. He says, I don't want that. God has blessed me with a good job. He says, and I want to give something back. He says, I'm going to come to. So, it touches me that somebody is going to drive their truck, and they're going to put their lawnmower on their truck, and they're going to drive all the way from Aurora, 25 miles, to come to Arvada to cut our grass. Because they want to give back. They want to give back. I think that's a praise, isn't it? I think that's yes, you can if you want. I mean, it's a great thing, and when I hear something like that, it just helps me to appreciate the true giving, not under compulsion, not because Pastor Gordon says, "Oh, you guys got to give more. If you don't, God is not going to bless you." But when people give because they want to. This piano was donated to us. We never paid a penny for it. A lady gave it to church. I mean, there are so many stories like that of you and people like you just giving back to God. And I told you in my email yesterday, I think you don't even realize the blessings and the rewards that God is preparing for those of you who are giving unselfishly and not under any compulsion, but because you love God. And I believe that. Okay, a couple of more. 6 and 7. 6 is experience true worship. Red always tells me that this is the verse that he loves the most. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. That's what true worship is. Yes, we come here to worship God, but the true worship is when we leave here. What are we going to do for those who are less fortunate? We're going to focus on ourselves and our needs and our wants and our expectations? Or are we going to, by the way, next week is a street beat. So today after church we have a meeting right here up front. Anybody who wants to go to the street beat. For those of you who don't know, street beat is a ministry when we go downtown and feed the homeless people. So that goes along with this. That's worship. That's worship. When we go to do the street beat downtown, and we take the grill and we cook hamburgers for those homeless people, that's worship, in my opinion. Not in my opinion, I'm sorry, according to the Bible. According to the Bible. Because the true worship is, and the religion is, to visit the orphans and widows in their affliction. That's what it is. So I hope that you will come and worship with us next week when we go do the street beat. Yes? Next Saturday, we're going to meet here in the parking lot about 1:30, and then we're going to go downtown. And we're probably going to meet in front of the state building there in the park. By the way, our Indonesian church also does the street beat once a month. I don't know if our Spanish church does the street beat, but I think they are too. Then the food bank, and Jasmina does the food bank here at this church. And we do quite a bit to worship God in this way by helping the less fortunate ones. The last point before we go home is this: set your eyes on Jesus. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter, who for the joy that was set before him, despised the hand of the throne. This Jesus, who had nothing in his life but joy and happiness, endured the cross and died on that cross so that you and I could have peace. And that's why Jesus says, I have overcome the world. In the world you are going to have the trouble, but I have overcome the world. And now he sits at the right-hand side of God. Set your eyes on Jesus. if you are always focusing on your own expectations and your own needs and your own musts and wants, you're going to be frustrated and you're going to get angry and you're not going to be a happy person. When you look at Jesus, and this is the last thing I'm going to tell you today, when you look at Jesus, the attractions of this world fade away. When you look at Jesus, the power of this world is lost. It does not have control over you anymore. When you look at Jesus, everything falls in its rightful place. And you can then balance the material and the work and the family and the joys and the spiritual and everything else in your life. So the key of this sermon is, if you want to change your expectations, if you don't want to be frustrated in life, set your eyes on Jesus. Look at Him and He's going to give you the balance that you need in your life. God bless you. I hope that this was a helpful message, and we are going to continue next Sabbath. Same time, same place. Amen.